Welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs. Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It is the OG Hour. I am your host, Patrick Allen, joined by my co-host every other week, Matt Verderame. Verderame, here we are, man. It is the halfway point, essentially, when the Chiefs play this game against the Broncos of the NFL season. And been a couple weeks since you and I talked. Kansas City is still undefeated at 8-0. As a Chiefs fan, how are you feeling about things so far?
Pretty good. I feel really good. Although now my screen went away for reasons I'm not quite sure about. But I feel great. In any event, listen, I was at the game Monday night, which was exciting, and then mixed with sheer terror when Mahomes got hurt. But yeah, I mean, look, on the whole, they're 8-0. I mean, it's hard to really complain about it. Everybody else in the conference has 2 losses, so I feel pretty good.
Yeah, and look, your camera's down for some reason, and we'll see if we can figure out those technical difficulties. But that could also be looked at as a win for our viewers.
Yeah, no question. There's no question. Frankly, the show just got better.
Yeah. I apologize for my camera still working. I know there's many of you who pine for the days when Verderame and I did this podcast without video, and he's back. There, we did it.
I think I went into the settings, and for reasons I don't understand, it went to my iPhone.
Technology is supposed to make things easier.
No idea.
Yeah.
No clue.
Well, we've got a great show for you guys today. It being the halfway point, I thought about doing grades, but I thought, you know what? Let's do some predictions. So we're going to do some Chiefs true or false as we look ahead to the second half of the season. And of course, we will preview the game against the Broncos. And I don't want to get into too much of that now, but that does make me a little bit nervous because obviously I think the Chiefs are a better team than the Broncos. I think that's obvious, but Sean Payton's a good coach, and last year the Broncos ended a Chiefs streak of wins over the Broncos. So I think they'd really love to give the Chiefs their first L this season.
A, yes. B, Denver really has to win. I mean, Denver is 5-4, which kudos to them. I never thought they'd be 5-4. They're 5-4. They're fighting for a playoff spot. They just got beat 41-10 by Baltimore. Like, if there's ever a game you're sitting there going, I mean, they gotta find a way, then this is a game. Now, of course, look, if they lose this game, they're far from out of it. And it's the toughest game they'll play all year, you would imagine. But yeah, it's a very meaningful game for them. I would expect that Denver is going to throw everything and its mother at this game. And that is the caution in this game for Kansas City is the Chiefs have the Bills next week. The Chiefs are undefeated. The Chiefs have been smooth sailing. Now, obviously, look, not saying every game's been easy. The last game wasn't easy, but this is the classic trap game where if you're the Chiefs, look, you're going to say all the right things. You're professionals. You understand what to say at the press conference, all that. You don't care about Denver. You just don't. Like they've been a threat to them the entirety of Mahomes' era in Kansas City. So that is the battle this week is almost the battle within. It is not overlooking a team that they ought to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the way the Chiefs play these days, seems like every game is a trap game for them. You never know what kind of hijinks they might get up to. You were there last week for Monday Night Football. This is a good Buccaneers team. I know they've lost 4 or 5, and they've got injuries out the wazoo, but Baker Mayfield is playing really, really well. They're well coached. They did a nice job. They came in to compete on Monday Night Football. Travis Kelce had his annual fumble that he loses, so it's good to get that out of the way if you're a Chiefs fan. Anything else, takeaways from that game from you?
I thought I thought that game showed you why they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, because they don't win that game without DeAndre Hopkins. And that's a game where he has 8 catches for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you watch it, and it was a game that there were times in it you felt almost as though the game could get away from them a little bit. It was 14-10, Tampa had the ball, the weather was bad. They were getting some injuries in the game. Thankfully, none of which ended up being serious. But yeah, I mean, it felt like they needed a guy to stabilize that game, and Hopkins multiple times did that. And I thought, look, a couple weeks ago when they beat the Raiders, every week I do a Sports Illustrated piece where I break down some film, and I do 3 plays. One of the plays I picked was Kelsey's touchdown against the Raiders, and I said, I'm not even going to break it down to watch Kelsey. But if you watch this play, Hopkins gets a one-on-one on the top side of the screen, the left side of the field, and he breaks on a route. He breaks on a slant, and he's open. He's wide open. He beats man coverage. I said, they're going to go back to this play, and Hopkins will be the main read, and it won't be Kelsey. And his second touchdown of the game was the exact same play. They just ran him on a quick slant, and to the Buccaneers' credit, the linebacker inside knew what was coming, and the second they snapped the ball, he ran over there, but it was too late. Hopkins torched the corner right off the snap. Mahomes threw the ball about as hard as he could, and Hopkins, no problem. He's a pro. He catches it and you move on. But look, I thought that game, it was a night where the defense was okay, but not to their standard, and it didn't matter because the offense put up 30 points and 400 yards and did what it needed to do.
For me, I'm watching this, and Hopkins, his catch radius and his size, obviously Mahomes has used Travis Kelce in the red zone. But can you think of another big-bodied red zone threat that the Chiefs have ever been able to have, like DeAndre Hopkins in the Mahomes era?
I'm just trying to think if they had a guy over the years. I mean, Watkins kind of, but he was a little bit of a different player. No. I mean, they did briefly have Kelvin Benjamin, which was a real treat. No. I think Watkins is probably the best comparison, but Hopkins is a better player than Sammy Watkins.
Yeah. And I think that's exciting if you're a Chiefs fan, because we see, look, actually the Chiefs have run the ball well in the red zone since they got Kareem Hunt this year, which is something that they hadn't done in the past. But they've often had to resort to a lot of gimmicky type stuff. Mahomes has done some miraculous things as he's wanted to do all over the field, but particularly in the red zone, stretching out plays, making things happen when the first read wasn't there. So this is really exciting. I'm really excited about the DeAndre Hopkins trade, knocking on wood. Hopefully he could stay healthy, but I think it's pretty evident that he's going to eat in this offense. And now you've got, I think everybody's kind of forgotten about Juju Smith-Schuster and how he performed a few weeks ago before he had that hamstring injury. Now it makes things even easier on Juju when he comes back. The Chiefs don't have to rush him back from this hamstring injury now, which is really important when it comes to these hamstring injuries because they come back, they linger all year. I think he's going to be able to make a really big impact for them too. Maybe he doesn't put up the yards he would have if they never traded for Hopkins, but moving the chains, finding space in the defense, I think it's going to be really important.
Yeah, and I think, look, all these injuries that they have right now, they don't have to rush any of these guys back right now. And, Charles Omenihu, Isaiah Pacheco, if they're 5-3, you might be seeing guys come back a week earlier. You might be seeing that a little bit. Juju, same deal. Wharton, I would imagine will be out this week. Same deal. They're 8-0. They don't have to rush anybody back.
Yeah.
They have the ability to sit there. And by the way, Kareem Hunt, to that point, Kareem Hunt's averaging 81 rushing yards a game for them. Even factoring in that he didn't play the first 3 weeks, if he does that the rest of the year, now he probably won't because Pacheco is going to come back, and obviously that dynamic will change. But if he were to average 81 yards per carry, in 14 games, he'd have 1,200 yards rushing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing.
He's been unbelievable. There's nobody in the world who thought he'd come in and be this good for them. So he has given them the ability to rely on a back and not worry about Pacheco and where is he, what's going to happen. I think if you're Kansas City, look, you just keep rolling the way you are. They have more than enough on this team, even with the injuries, to beat Denver. And then you go to Buffalo and you see if Juju comes back, Wharton, they get him back. And, we'll see. My guess is Pacheco is probably not back for that game. I would also think probably the same for Omenihu. But you don't have to. You don't need them back. And then after they play Buffalo, they play Carolina and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Like, they are in a position where they don't have to rush these guys back. And look, at the risk of sounding very like dismissive of the rest of the NFL, there are 4 games after Buffalo: Carolina, Raiders on Black Friday, Chargers at home on a Sunday night, at Cleveland. Like, I respect the Chargers enough. Like, that game, you can't sleep on it. If I'm looking at Amenho and Pacheco, like, unless they're coming back for the Bills game, I just target that Chargers game. You know, maybe you come back in that Raiders game just to, play 20 snaps and just knock the rust off. But, like, I'm not rushing any of these guys back out. For why? For what reason? There's no reason to do that.
Shout out to Tone for the super chat. Says, it feels like we signed a new offense with Kareem Hopkins because half of our offense is depleted. Like, these players were not in the room during training camp, and now they're key stars. It really is remarkable. It's a hats off to Andy Reid. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later, and I've got a good question for you, Verderame. Before we get into all of that, do us a favor. We're trying to get to 400 reader reviews over on Apple Podcasts. Go on over there, leave us a 5-star review, ask us a question, leave a comment. We'll read it in the show. It's a really great way, free way to support the show. We really appreciate it. Help us get to 400 before the end of the season. And I also got to let you know that Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower and on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. You guys have heard me talking about some of my plays on Underdog. It's an absolute blast, super simple to use. Just download their app and use our code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, to get up to 1,000 bonus cash instantly. You've got to be 18 or older, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned about your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7-HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE-NEW YORK to 467-369. All right, let's just talk really briefly, Verderame. Obviously, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins. The trade deadline for the Chiefs. They go and they get Josh Uche from the Patriots, who I by the way, have you been watching the stuff that Bill Belichick's been doing in the media? I kind of almost hope he doesn't go back to coaching because I just love hearing him talk about football. Like, I just so insightful to hear the greatest coach of all time give these insights into the league current day. He doesn't, he's straightforward. He's candid about his evaluations and what he says. I just find it really fascinating. What about you?
Yeah, he's very good. He's very good. I'm not surprised. Like, you see him in the media when he was a coach, and he was always like kind of dour and dry. I've talked to people in the league who know him who are like, if you actually knew him, he's hysterical. Like, he's very funny. I will say, I will never forget the first Super Bowl I ever covered in person. It was the Patriots and the Rams year. The Patriots beat the Chiefs in that classic AFC title game. And we're in this big ballroom, and everybody's firing questions at Belichick. I asked him a question. The other guy asked him a question, whatever. And a foreign reporter asks Belichick something about like the origin of one of the schemes in the NFL. And Belichick gave the guy, I remember some of you remember timed it, an almost 8-minute answer, and like went back into how when he was a kid, he and his dad would go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and go through like files in the basement and read all. I mean, it was insane. It was one of the most detailed answers I've ever heard in anything. So I'm not surprised he's really good at this. Like, I'm not surprised that the guy's getting done. By the way, Dave, I'll say it for Patrick. Thank you for the super chat. That is also really, really kind of you. I'll say one thing: if you love my content, you're in good shape these days because I'm here. I've got the MMQB podcast. I've got the KCSN podcast. I've got my own podcast on Patreon. So really, it's bad news if you don't like me. Because I'm everywhere.
You can't escape.
If you like me, you can basically just wall-to-wall coverage all day and night.
Was that Belichick? Was that question about why there's a long snapper And like,
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I can't remember it either. I feel like maybe he answered that one at one point too. He talked about the history of like how the long snapper became, a specialized position and how they used to do it. Yeah, but Belichick's been great. He had some nice things to say about Josh Uche, as kind of being a pass rushing specialist for the Chiefs, and how he thought it was a good move for Kansas City, and that they got him for essentially nothing. And that's really how the trade deadline has worked here for Brett Veach.
Yeah. No, listen, I think I think the trade deadline, like, we always focus on the actual day of the deadline, right? Like, we focus on Tuesday in this case. The reality is that they made two huge moves, like, one huge move in Hopkins and one good move in Uche. They were one of the teams that I walked away from feeling like they won the trade deadline. I mean, them, Buffalo, certainly not Dallas. Pittsburgh to an extent, although I don't like it. Giving up a fifth for Mike Williams feels like a lot. Like, I don't know. Like, if he's healthy, then, or I guess maybe, like, I don't know. A fifth round pick for Williams is a gamble, but if it works out, okay, fine. Detroit getting Zadarius Smith, like, I like that move for them. So
yeah,
I thought a lot of the contending teams did well. I really do feel that way. Whereas, like, I don't know. You look at some of these other teams, like the Bengals got Khalil Herbert, and that's fine. Like, man, like, you didn't get anybody on defense. The Ravens got Deontay Johnson, who I love as a player, but also, like, again, you can't stop anyone. Like, you didn't add a defense. Like, they should have been all in on Marshawn Lattimore. Like, they're the ones who really should have been. So, Houston, you didn't get anybody to help your offensive line. Have you seen that offensive line? So I was more surprised by those teams. Like, the Chiefs had already made a couple of them. I was surprised by some of these other teams that I thought, look, man, you got to do something, and kind of just sat there. That surprised me.
So the Chiefs miss out on Lattimore. The price was steep, and not the kind of price that Veach likes to pay for a guy that he's not going to have control over for more than a handful of games. How concerned are you about the cornerback position? Because what the Chiefs being interested in that tells us they feel like they needed some help there, weren't able to get it.
Yep.
And the tackle position, which I know the Chiefs are undefeated, and Mahomes covers up a lot of warts, but Wanye Morris has not been good. Both Wanye Morris and Kingsley Suamataia, in the short amount that he played, are graded horribly in pass blocking from Pro Football Focus. Which of those two concerns you the most?
I mean, they're both concerning. I think probably actually corner, because the tackle spot, like, as much as it has been graded out as an issue, and I'm not arguing with the grade, if you look at their actual numbers, statistically speaking, and part of this is because of the way they play. I mean, they've given up 16 sacks. Only 5 teams have given up fewer. Denver, Arizona, Baltimore, Green Bay, and Buffalo. Sack percentage in terms of, like, how often 100 pass plays you drop back and get sacked, the Chiefs are 8th best in the NFL. It hasn't been something that has, like, really killed them. And again, some of that's scheme, some of that's Mahomes throwing the ball quick. I mean, if you can look at average time in the pocket per drop back, Mahomes is 8th fastest, 2.3 seconds per drop back. His pressure, like, as bad as the tackles have been, this might surprise some people. His pressure, for anyone who started all of their team's games, the only guys who have seen less pressure, there's only, if I'm doing this really quickly, 7 guys who have seen a lower pressure rate. He's been hit 27 times all year, which is 11th highest, but, like, it's pretty average. Like, it's not. So my point is, I'm not that worried about it because of who the quarterback is. Like, he knows how to manipulate and get the ball out, and they scheme around it. I'm more worried about corner in the sense that I was at that game Monday night, and of course you could see us on TV too. They threw at the other side of McDuffie all night long. I mean, just wrong. Now, part of that is because Trent McDuffie's great, and it doesn't matter who the hell's on the other side you're going to throw at him. I get it. But when it was Jalen Watson, you were like, yeah, go ahead and throw it at the other side. It doesn't matter. I think Joshua Williams is a good cover corner in man coverage. But when you play him in zone, it's a problem. He's like my 2-year-old daughter in the driveway. He just gets lost in space. Like, he doesn't, like, he'll carry a guy too far. He'll drift inside when he's supposed to be covering the flat. Like, that's a problem. And so my question now is, okay, Najee Johnson looks like he's going to be healthy this week. Is he just going to get all those snaps? Are they going to rotate these guys? Is Roland Wallace going to get some? Like, what are they going to do? Because that is a problem. I don't think it means like, oh my God, they can't win the Super Bowl, but like, it's a problem. They're going to have to figure that out to some extent. And they have to roll through it a little bit.
Yeah, I think, look, they've got great coaching and they're making up for what's going on at the tackle position. Obviously, I think they came into the season with a plan to try to run the football more, to try to run the football up the middle. But you see, I mean, as good as he's playing and it's working out, running Kareem Hunt up the middle 27 times a game is not a great sustainable strategy for the Chiefs. So they kind of need Pacheco back, because if they want to run the ball that much, they need some other bodies in there. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they haven't started utilizing CEH, just for that simple fact. Just because he has good ball security, just to come in there and take a few carries off of Hunt's plate. But I understand that the roster mechanics can sometimes be tricky, and CEH has been on the shelf for quite a while. I worry about when they're playing the really good teams. I mean, we saw it when they played the Bengals, and Hendrickson was just eating them alive, and they're not able to get the ball out quick, or some team does come and stops them from running the ball. But credit to them so far. Teams know they're coming out on first down and second down and trying to run the football up the middle with Kareem Hunt. And if they manage to, like, the Buccaneers, I think at halftime, Kareem Hunt was only averaging like 2.1 or 2.9 yards per carry. It was like, really, they were doing it. And in the most un-Andy Reid move of all time, he refuses to go away from the run in these games. I can't believe it. It's like I woke up in some sort of alternate universe.
Well, it's funny because when you look at them, like in that Tampa game, as it started to rain in the third quarter, I'm sitting there and I'm like, they got to run the ball. And Mahomes played very well. Like, Mahomes played terrific. It had nothing to do with like, oh, he's not doing the job. He was awesome. It was more that Tampa Bay stunk all year against the run, and it's raining, and you're starting to figure, all right, this is a little bit of a problem here. Like, you got to try to do something. If you look at their play chart in the second half of the game, honest to God, 3/4 of it is just Kareem Hunt up the middle. Run. And then they got in the red zone, they threw the ball like Hopkins and Kelsey occasionally. That was it. That was the whole game. They have one power this year that they have not had in the past. They can run the ball very consistently. And it's funny because if you look at them, they're in like the bottom 5 in the league of yards per carry. They're 3.9. But they're number 1 in success rate because they just constantly gain 3, 4, 5 yards. So, they're never going backward. The other thing with them this year that's even more pronounced, their interior of the line is so good that even against guys like Vita Vea, they're just like, yeah, we're going to blow you off the line of scrimmage. There's nothing you're doing about it. Like, I'll tell you right now, next week, and next week we'll get to next week. When they play Buffalo, I'm telling you right now, that game's they're going to line up behind those guys and just relentlessly pound the football at Buffalo. I mean, the Bills have not been good against the run. The Bills love to play nickel. They almost never come out of it. And the Chiefs are going to line up. I guarantee you they're going to get in 2 tights. And if the Bills don't come out of nickel in that game, the Chiefs are going to line up behind those tight ends and those interior linemen and just say, fine, here it comes. Stop it. Yeah. I think that has been the one thing over the years with the Chiefs where they've been bad in short yardage. They've been bad in the red zone at times. And by the way, speaking of the red zone, their last 3 games, they're 11 of 13 in the red zone. They went from, I believe it was 29th in the league. They are now ranked 12th in the red zone. So they're 12th in the red zone. They're first on third down. They're over 53%, which is ridiculous. They're not a supercharged offense, but they're ruthlessly efficient. And that is different than last year, where last year it felt like they would go through these long spells where they just couldn't do anything. Yeah. This year, like, they don't have those lightning quick scores a lot, but man, they just grind you into a powder. I was talking about this actually earlier today with Tucker Franklin. So the Chiefs, a couple interesting stats about them this year I found really interesting. Through 9 weeks, obviously 8 weeks for them, but through 9 weeks of the season, They have the fewest amount of offensive drives of any team in the NFL. They've had 81 drives. And part of that is because they average 7 plays a drive, which is only behind Washington at 7.1. They average 2.46 points per drive, which is 6th in the NFL. They're 9th in yards per drive and almost 35. But here's the funny thing. The fewest amount of drives, and yet they're 14th in plays. They just grind you down. I mean, they just hold the ball and they run the ball down your throat, and they're really efficient in the pass game. And, by the end of it, you look at them and like they're 10th in yards or 10th in scoring per game. Like, it's a good offense. It's not a great offense, but it's an offense that I got to tell you, I think really is going to play well in January, because it's just a kind of offense that you can just grind teams. And especially when Pacheco comes back, where it's like, okay, we're just going to hand off 30 times. And then when you're tired and you can't get a pass rush, then Mahomes is going to go over the top. He's going to hit Hopkins and Worthy, and they're going to have 14 catches to Kelsey. They're just very well put together.
Yeah, and then they've been so efficient on third down. So you deal with the interior offensive line, and then you got to deal with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey on third down when they got to have it. I think this is my prediction for what's going to happen later this season. If he comes back healthy and a reasonable approximation of his usual speed and self, I think this offense, this running game, is going to start to get explosive when Isaiah Pacheco comes back. Because people forget, because he runs so hard, how fast he is. I believe he's like a 4.3 type guy. So you bring Isaiah Pacheco back, they're going to keep giving the ball to Kareem Hunt. Up the middle, Pacheco up the middle, Hunt up the middle, Pacheco up the middle, Hunt up the middle. They're not running Kareem Hunt outside very much. He doesn't have the speed, right, anymore to do that. Now, if you're going to come down on the blocks, you're going to try to stop this run. You're going to try to stop this up the middle. Andy's going to have some counters. He's going to fake you out, send Pacheco outside, or he might just get through up the middle, and then he has the speed to take it to the house. They've not been a very explosive running game, even with Pacheco. I think that's going to change because of this new style of offense.
Well, again, I mean, to that point, and I don't disagree. It's a good point. I think, look, it is a team this year that, quite frankly, I always was annoyed with them last year. I mean, for a million reasons offensively. But one of the things I always said was, I got so frustrated because it felt like there were times where they just tried to force a square peg in a round hole. It was like, guys, you can't throw the ball. Tony stinks, more stinks. Like, you're not going to win like this. This is ridiculous. You can't have MVS out there 60 snaps a game. It's not going to happen. I feel like this year Andy has just leaned into, like, yeah, listen, fine. We're going to throw the ball underneath. We're going to beat you with yards after catch. We're going to run the ball down your throat. There's just nothing you're doing about it. That's what we're going to play. Yeah. And to their credit, they have stuck to that. They have done it. That's why I said it again, not to overlook Denver here, but in a couple weeks when they play the Bills, I guarantee that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to beat them throwing the ball in the middle of the field because the safeties aren't great. And they are just going to relentlessly run the ball at them. And they're going to shorten the game, and they're going to take the ball out of Allen's hands. And it's not always a beautiful thing to watch in terms of like, hey, it's not that point-a-minute offense they had with Tyreek Hill. But there is a beauty in the fact that they're relentless. If you watch, like, I'll be honest, on Monday night when they got the ball in overtime, I basically started putting my coat on when this game's over.
So did Baker Mayfield.
Oh, he knew. I'm like, they are going right down the field. There's no chance they're losing this football game. And I think they hit third down once. It was on the touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, they just went right down the field.
You saw the clip of Mayfield, right? When
he threw his head back.
God, his soul left his body. I mean, it's like, most NFL quarterbacks, and Baker's like, he's got swagger. He's a competitive guy. They don't want to go out there and show any sign of weakness. This is what Mahomes has done to these guys. Like, they've seen enough overtime of Mahomes that they're like, the man was just like, oh, fuck my life. Just fuck me, man. Like, it's so great.
It's funny that, like, one thing about them, we've heard a lot of, like, conversations, right, about how good are they really and how good is this team really? And I got to laugh not because, like, I'm a Chiefs fan, but, like, just covering the league and remembering the league, even when I was, just kind of like in my infancy covering it and also like as a fan. This is what the Patriots were. The Patriots, all the time, we'd have this conversation. Oh, the Colts look better this year. Steelers look, here comes Phil Rivers and the Chargers. and then you'd get to January and you'd be like, nobody's beating that fucking team.
Yep.
Nobody. Like, you had to go, as the late great Therese Paler would always say, you had to go where the phones don't work. You got to go up to Foxborough and deal with Belichick and deal with Brady. Like I always say, for me, like obviously the games are on CBS for them, and I always, they cut in with that aerial shot of Foxborough, and then they'd show Brady and they'd show Belichick, and you're like, yeah, whoever's playing them's losing. Like they're just not going to win this game. Like, I don't care what else happens. And for years it was always like, well, yeah, they have Gronk, but who else is there? There's Hogan, and there's there's Amendola and Malcolm, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter because they have Brady and Belichick, and they're always good defensively, and they're gonna kick your ass. They're gonna find some way to do it. Yeah. They're gonna hang around. They're gonna make 5 or 6 big plays in the game, and you're gonna lose. And to the Chiefs' credit, that's kind of what they've become, where you sit there and you're like, all right, like what's going to happen here? It's a close game. And then, Hopkins makes that play down the middle, which also is a play by Mahomes, a great throw. And, Mahomes breaks your back on a 3rd and 9 scramble. And then defensively, they get one big sack at a key moment in the game. And Butker hits a 56-yard field goal. And like, you walk out of there and you're like, yeah, they weren't dominant. They won by 10 points because they're better than you. They're better at everything in the sport than you are when it really matters. And that's kind of what they become. Like they are ruthlessly efficient. And that's what New England was for 2 decades.
Yeah. Makes things easier on the defense, makes things easier on everybody, and frustrates the hell out of their opponents. All right, let's get to some Chiefs, true or false. This is the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Patrick Allen, Matt Verderame here on the OG Hour. If you're new here, welcome. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. And let's get some more Chiefs fans in here. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you have notifications turned on because we go live all the time. And especially if there's any kind of emergency news, we do emergency podcasts. So you don't want to miss when we're on here. So, all right, we're heading into the second half of the season. I wrote down a list of things. I'm going to ask you you tell me true or false, your opinion on these. I'll start off with the big one, the one that annoys everybody every time I bring it up because people hate fun and they don't like having the conversation too early. Are the Chiefs going to go undefeated? True or false?
Well, I guess if you're so I guess false would mean that they're not going to go undefeated.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
The Chiefs will go undefeated. True or false?
Okay. False. Look, if they win on Sunday and they beat Buffalo, then I think it's an actual legitimate conversation. They're 10-0 with the schedule that they have coming up. There's a real world where they're 14-0 playing Houston. I mean, that's possible. That being said, like the reason I say it's false is like if I had to pick it game by game, I'd probably pick them in every game. I mean, they're the best team in football. But it's the NFL, man. It's so hard. I mean, even this week, for an example, right? Like they should kick the crap out of Denver in a vacuum. But it's a big game for Denver, and Denver's going to throw everything they have into this game. And the Chiefs, like, there's a world where they're just completely looking ahead to Buffalo and they stub their toe on this. And I don't think they will. I think they'll win ugly because it just kind of has a feel of that game. But it's just so hard, man. It's so hard to do that. Like they could even lose. Like I don't think they could lose to Carolina. I think that's pretty much impossible. Like they could lose at home to the Chargers. They could lose at Pittsburgh. I'll spin it back on you. If you knew, like not including the playoffs, just the 17 regular season games, if you knew they could go undefeated, and you had the power to say, would you want them to be undefeated going into the playoffs?
Yeah. They're too mentally tough. I don't think that like the fact that they haven't lost since, last Christmas, I just don't think it's going to phase them because they even this game against the Broncos. I think they could lose it because they just, they play a little fundamentally unsound sometimes during the regular season and make mistakes. But like, I think they're too well coached to look ahead. They'll be well prepared for the Broncos. And like, sometimes stuff just happens, but I wouldn't want to take that away from the players. I don't think they'll feel any better in January hosting Baltimore if they're like, oh, thank God we lost that game to the Broncos in November. So we don't have the pressure of also being undefeated on our shoulders. I think this is a team with the veteran leadership that they have who, I mean, let's be honest. They won the Super Bowl last year and Patrick Mahomes immediately started talking about a three-peat. Like while he's holding the Lombardi was like, I want to go, we got to do it again. We got to be the first team to three-peat. So I think they would want it if they're 14-0 going into those last 2 weeks. they would want to play and they'd want to go for everything.
There's a part of me that's like, if they're 17-0, the pressure in the playoffs is just going to be outrageous. I mean, the pressure is huge anyway, but my God, if that team's 17-0 going to the playoffs trying to three-peat,
yeah,
I mean, every second of every game is going to be scrutinized to the hilt. Now, I'll say this. If they can finish 20-0 and they win the Super Bowl, I mean, they are inarguably the greatest team in NFL history. I mean, that is, I don't even know how you could attempt to argue that.
Yeah.
You three-peated and you went undefeated doing it. And by the way, if they did that, that would mean that dating back to last year, they've won 26 straight games. That's almost 2 seasons. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And it includes 2 playoff runs, Super Bowl runs.
If they do that, they should knock down the Hall of Fame in Canton and rebuild it around Arrowhead Stadium. Just build a massive complex. Arrowhead Stadium's in the middle.
I mean, it would be unbelievable. I think, though, the answer is false just because it's so hard to do. But again, if they win this weekend and then they go to Buffalo and they win that game, A, it's going to become a huge national story because people are going to look at the schedule and go, well, they could do it. Yeah. And 2, it is possible. At 10-0, I'd still say, listen, the odds are you're going to stub your toe somewhere. But, look, if they're 10-0, I know anything's possible. They're probably not losing to Carolina and the Raiders. So then they'd be 12-0. And then you'd really start getting into like, okay, they're 5 games away here. Like that would be fascinating. But I'll say false for now.
Yeah, it's tough. And like if they even, if they were to get past Houston, those last 2 games of the year, Christmas Day at Pittsburgh, that is no cakewalk. Nope. And then they got to go to Denver. So they do that. They're really, really going to earn it without slipping up. So, all right. More to come on that. I'll rekindle that conversation if they beat the Bills and the Broncos.
Also, let me just add real quickly. If they're undefeated, one thing I've seen in the chat, like kind of an argument, they're not yanking their starters. I think there would be a mutiny. Like Mahomes would lose his mind. Mahomes, Kelsey, Christian, those guys. I know there's like a risk of injury. I get those guys would go insane. They're so competitive. I mean, did you see the video of Andy telling Mahomes he was going to take him out on Monday night, and Mahomes was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
he was like offended by it. That is one thing I would argue with people. If they get to 14-15-0, I don't think they're going to be yanking guys out of these games. I do not think that's going to happen.
Agreed, and I don't think they should. Okay, next one up. The Chiefs will lose 2 games or fewer. True or false?
True. I think they're going to be 15-2, or 16-1, something. I think. Because if you look at their games, listen, I think there's going to be some ugly ones mixed in just because that's the way it goes. I think they're going to beat Denver twice, assuming they have to beat Denver the last game of the year. I mean, that might be a game where they just rest everybody. But if they need to win those games, and they'll beat Denver twice, the Panthers, the Browns, the Raiders. I mean, that gets you to, 13? And that leaves you with the Chargers, the Bills, the Steelers, and the Texans. Like, I don't know. That's probably 2-2 or 3-1. So... yeah, I mean, I think they're probably, I'll say 15-2, but like they could absolutely go 16-1 or something like that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, this one might be a long shot, but Patrick Mahomes will rally and win the MVP.
That's false unless they go undefeated. If they go undefeated, he's the MVP of the league. I don't care what his numbers are. If you go undefeated, you have to have the MVP of the league in your game. Yeah. The hard part for Mahomes right now is like looking at his numbers. Obviously, they're not great. His yardage is not like atrocious or anything. I mean, his yardage, he's thrown for 1942. So he's 243 a game. So if you average that out, 243. So I mean, he's on pace for like 4,100 passing yards. He's on pace for 23, 24 touchdowns. Like, for him, it's a bad. Now he's completing 70% of his passes, and he's 7.2 yards per attempt. Pretty good. But no, the only way I think it happens is, other than them being undefeated, is if in the last 9 games he just goes nuclear, and like it's one of these things where he throws for. I mean, he's basically got 2,000. So let's say he throws for 2,500 yards over the last 9 games, which he could. And then touchdown wise, he throws for like 25, which that feels high. Like that's probably pretty tough to do. The yardage, I think he could do it, but
Yeah.
I think the touchdown number is going to be pretty tough for him to get there.
And you got the, Lamar and the Baltimore regular season light show that they have every year. And the Chiefs don't care about that. They just care about winning. And so
Right.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be tough for him. Okay. Next up, George Karlaftis, who has 4 sacks, will finish the year with more sacks than Chris Jones, who currently has 3.
I think it's close, like it was last year. I will take Jones. I think so. False. Because Jones is one of those kinds of guys who could have like 5 sacks in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like he's just gonna have a game which just destroys your. The funny thing is, you look at Jones, like, 3 sacks. He's been awesome this year. Like last couple weeks, he's been a little quiet, and that happens. But for the most part, he's been dominant as hell. No, I think they both finished around 10 sacks. I think they both can get right around that number.
I wanted to ask you, as good as this defense has been this year, they have not been getting sacks. The Chiefs actually, only 3 teams in the NFL, the Panthers, the Dolphins, and the Falcons, have fewer sacks than the Chiefs. Chiefs have 17. They're tied with the Bengals and the Raiders. And then the Patriots have 16. And then there's a huge drop off. So it's 4 teams, my bad. The Panthers have 10, the Dolphins have 10, and the Atlanta Falcons have 9. That's putrid. What do you think's going on there? Is it just, I know they're getting pressures. They're just not getting the sacks.
I think it's just kind of, a little bit of weirdness, but they're not finishing. They're 8th in pressure rate. They're number 1 easily in quarterback knockdown rate. In hurry rate, they're a little bit down there. They are 13th. But like, they're getting home. They're getting home. They're getting pressure. So to me, like, the sack thing's a little bit of a fluke. Like, I get it. I mean, hey, look, you either have them or you don't. But like the other thing too, with some of these sack numbers, like there are some teams ahead of them that are like right ahead of them that have played an extra game. Like if the Chiefs just have one of those days, they have 6 sacks in one of these games, they'll be right in the middle of the pack. So it's been something too where I think a lot of teams, they just expect pressure, especially with Spagnuolo, and they get rid of the ball quick. They also played Lamar Jackson, so that was a game. I got they got 7 sacks in the game, they had 1. But the Chiefs are getting there. They're just not finishing the job, which, listen, part of the deal. But I don't have any real concern. I mean, they've been great defensively. They're ranking they're 6th in yards per play against them. They've done everything you could want. I mean, yards per carry against them, 3.7. Only Baltimore's better. They've been everything I could ask them. Even though they don't have the great sack numbers, like they're getting there. They're getting home. I mean, this is a cumulative number, and almost every team in front of them has played an extra game. They have 54 quarterback hits. That's 11th. Yeah. Like, and again, I mean, so you're averaging 54 quarterback hits over 8 is like 7 a game. I mean, if they played one more game at that and had that average, they'd be 5th. So, I mean, they're getting there. They're causing problems. They're not finishing the job. And so, you end up with that number.
They're also probably getting fewer opportunities because they are crushing teams in time of possession with the way that they're running the football. So, you have to have opportunities to get sacks as well. So,
I can tell you right now, to your point, no team has seen fewer drives against them than the Chiefs. The Chiefs have only seen 78 drives against them this year. The next fewest is 82.
Yeah. Wow.
So it just, and plays, only Tennessee has seen less plays than Kansas. I mean, for context, the Chiefs have faced 474 plays. The average in the league right now is 557.
It's hard to score on a defense if you don't get any chances to do it.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's also hard to rack up tackles for loss and sack when you're 100 plays behind everybody else.
Yeah. Okay. Andy Reid should win Coach of the Year. True or false?
This is always hard because you give it to the coach typically who they overperformed. They'd have to be undefeated. It's just because they're expected to be this. They're expected to be 14-3 and better. I mean, right now, I saw Nick right the other day saying Dan Campbell's a runaway. I don't know that I totally agree with that. Like Dan Quinn to me is probably way up there. And in the AFC, I don't know that like Harbaugh, like John Harbaugh, or Jim Harbaugh in San Diego, or San Diego Chargers. They make the playoffs. Like, is he up there? I mean, to me, it's always about like who outperforms. Now, again, if they go 17-0, even 16-1, if they're 16-1, yeah, Joshua, that's a good point. You give it to Gannon in Arizona. If that team wins that division, like to me, those guys, that is, or Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, like those guys, to me, in my definition of it, kind of deserve it, quote unquote, more, just because they're dealing with a lesser hand.
Well, I'll give you my argument, which is I know they've got Mahomes. What the Chiefs have done, losing all of the players that they've lost this season.
That's
I mean, it's like, they lost their number 1 wide receiver, number 2 wide receiver, number 3 wide receiver, number 5 wide receiver, number 1 running back, number 2 running back, number 3 tight end, 4 tight end, number 2 cornerback. Like Mike Dan has been hurt. People have been hurt for stretch. It's incredible, and they're undefeated. So, I saw somebody was like, yeah, the Commanders coach should win it because, they were supposed to be terrible, but they're not. For me, teams go from worst to first every year in the NFL. It's designed for that to happen. And I'm more, and maybe in a year it makes sense for that to be the coach of the year, but I'm more impressed with sustained excellence in the face of adversity. To be 8-0 with what the Chiefs have had to deal with, pulling Kareem Hunt off the couch, pulling Juju Smith-Schuster, Pirine. I mean, it's crazy what they've done. I just think, Andy just never gets the benefit of the doubt. But like if Mike Tomlin somehow manages to go, win 9 games with Mason Rudolph, people are like, we should probably give it to Mike Tomlin, which fair. You won 9 games with Mason Rudolph. But you throw any of those coaches and put them in charge of the Chiefs this year, do you think they'd be anywhere close to 8-0?
No. I think you're definitely right. Like Andy Reid deserves a ton of credit. Like the injury thing is a real argument. It is a fair argument. I guess the hard part, it's like Belichick all those years in New England, right? You're like, okay, you're going to give him, coach of the year because New England's 14-2. Like, it just feels like all the time, like you just expect it. That being said, to your point, they have been besieged by injuries this season. And I guess the word that comes to mind is there's just a juggernaut. They just don't lose. I mean, people say whatever they want about it. You can sit there and complain of, hey, they're not explosive enough. They don't do this enough. Mahomes has been average by his numbers. All they do is win games. They just win and win and win. Look, everybody who's ever listened to me for 5 minutes knows, and I'm a hockey fan. I'm a Devils fan. When I was a kid, they won 3 Stanley Cups in 9 years, went to 4 finals. And people used to bitch nonstop. They're boring. They play defense. I'm like, you know what else they do? They win all the time. They know who they are. They play to their strengths, and they're just relentless. And eventually, they're just going to wear you down. They're going to beat you. And Kansas City is a very weird combination of, I think, the defense I trust most in the NFL, and then also like God at quarterback. And there's like just this like weird, like he doesn't have to go into God mode very often with this team, but then when he does, he can just do it. Like his fourth quarter numbers are ridiculous this year. Like he can just be like, okay, I'm going to win now, and that's it, and the game's over, and they win, and it's an incredible combination.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, here's a fun one. The Chiefs will effectively, because it's not possible for them to actually do it, but the Chiefs will effectively have the AFC's number 1 seed wrapped up by Thanksgiving.
Okay, so that would imply, in my head, that they win these next 2 games. That they beat Denver and then they beat Buffalo. Because if they do that, I know the Steelers have 2 losses. Everybody else would, at that point, at least have 3. I expect the Steelers would probably have 3 at that point as well. I'm going to say true, man. Like I think the Denver game is a weird game, and they got to be careful with this one. I am wrong a lot, but ever since Allen and Mahomes have come to powers in their respective cities, I have always picked that game right. Whenever they've played each other, I am whatever the hell it is, 7-0, and always pick the game right. Don't know why, whatever. I think the Chiefs are going to go up there and lay it on them. I really do. I think it's a bad matchup for Buffalo, man. That game, the Bills are knocking up the middle. I think the Chiefs will just go after it the entire game. They've always, like, for the most part, given Allen a pretty tough time. I mean, do you know the last time the Chiefs gave up a 300-yard passer in a regular season?
Oh, man.
They did it in Super Bowl 57. That's the last time, as a hint.
Yeah.
When is the last time it's happened in the regular season?
Did they not at all last year?
No, never. Not even close.
Holy smokes. I don't know.
Week 7 against the Niners when Garoppolo did it in garbage time.
It's
been like 41 games.
That's amazing.
Including the playoffs. It's ridiculous. Like, they just don't. So I look at it like, especially if Coleman does not play, and Cooper, by the way, is in a cast right now with his wrist. Like, so I don't know what's going on there. But, like, let's say Cooper and Shakir play, but Coleman doesn't. They will just put Connor on one. They will put McDuffie in all likelihood on Cooper. And they'll say, look, you got to run the ball. And nobody runs the ball on them. And I just think it's one of these games. It's a bad matchup, man. I don't know. Like, Kelsey is turning it on, all that stuff. Like, it's just. So I guess the answer for me is true. I think they will gut it out against Denver. And I think we'll spend the entire week talking about, oh my God, if that's what they look against Denver, they can't possibly beat Buffalo. And then they'll just go up there. And they'll you know what they'll do? They'll play like they did in Tampa a couple years ago on that Sunday night game. They will just line up in 2 tight ends and just pound them over and over and over. And then they'll throw off the play action and they'll hit Gray and they'll hit Kelsey. And that game, I honestly think they'll win that game. I do. I think they'll go up there and beat them.
They show up for the big games. I mean, I know they were banged up, but I thought that 49ers game was a little bit of a wild card. What's going to happen? And I think until the offense played really well against the Buccaneers, I thought that was one of the better performances that the Chiefs have had this year, was when they took care of San Francisco. So that's a good team. And we've seen this from them in the past, where they kind of fuck around when they're playing the Broncos and the Raiders and stuff. And then when it comes for a big game, they uncork it a little bit.
It's also too, like, styles make fights, and I just wonder in that game, and not to look ahead, but like, look, we're talking about it. I just wonder in that game if it's one of those deals where Buffalo, they just can't stop them from running the ball. I mean, Buffalo struggled with that, and plus, Buffalo's not like, they played 2 good teams this year, Baltimore and Houston. They couldn't stop either one of them. Both those teams just did anything they wanted to do offensively the entire game. That does not portend well against Kansas City.
Yeah. All right. That was fun. True or false? I've got some other ones that I'm not going to ask you. We'll save them for later. Let's talk a little bit about this Chiefs-Broncos game before we get out of here. Chiefs big favorites in this one. Not as big of favorites as they were against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading in, but it's Chiefs minus 7.5. Over-under in this game is 42. The Broncos are kind of a weird team. They've been getting a little bit better on offense as Bo Nix settles in, but they don't have a lot of weapons. Defense has obviously been really strong this year. They started off the year. They lost to the Seahawks and the Steelers. They put it on the Buccaneers on the road, beat the Jets by a point, beat the Raiders, lost to the Chargers, beat the Saints, I think with that Derek Carr killed them, beat the Panthers, and then got boat raced by the Ravens. So, and when you look at these wins, there's like one impressive win on there. The rest of them, it's the Bucs game, right? The rest of them, not good. Is this a good football team?
I don't think they're good. I think their defense is good. I think their offense is pretty putrid outside of Sutton. But like I said, I could see this being a weird game. I could just see this being a game where Denver they just go full tilt, man, and they gotta win, and they're gonna do anything they can do. Like, now, look, that all being said, I mean, a lot of teams do that against the Chiefs and they just lose. But if I had to pick a number, I actually will take Denver to cover, because I just think it's gonna be a bizarre football game. I think it's just one of these games where, like, the Chiefs will win, but it'll be hideous. You know, they'll win, like 23 to like 16 or something. Like, it'll just be like kind of knuckles in the dirt, grounded out. Now, I will also say this: if it plays out the way, like, in theory it should play out, I mean, it's just going this game like 27-3. But it's always weird. It's a divisional game. Denver needs it. They just got blown out. The Chiefs are off a short week. They got Buffalo next week. Like, it's a game the Chiefs need to be focused on, and not just like, oh, we're gonna kill this team, because then like that's how you find yourself in trouble.
Yeah, and Peyton's a good coach, so he'll have stuff. Bo Nix got a touchdown pass the other week. Like, be ready for flea flickers. Be ready for manufactured offense.
Yep.
Going for it on fourth down, all that kind of stuff. So this is a game where I think the Chiefs need to put the hammer down on defense, because this Broncos offense, the running game it's not good, right? It's not. The only thing that they have is Nix can make some good throws every now and again, but he's playing like a rookie. But he uses his legs.
He does.
So in this one, and I think he has to, because with all due respect to the players on this team, I mean, this wide receiving core, Cortland Sutton's fine. That's it, man. Little Jordan Humphreys, Javonte Williams is their second leading receiver, and he's the running back.
It's bad. It's bad. Like, they don't run the ball particularly well, except when Nick scrambles. If you look at them in terms of like yards per play offensively, they're 24th. And also keep in mind too, and I know, because I've watched a lot of Denver this year, their offensive numbers aren't good, and they sound better than they even are, because they've had a lot of games this year where they've been down huge in like the fourth quarters of these games, and they just rack up a ton of garbage time. Like, there was a game to kind of expound that. They're not 23-0 in the fourth quarter of the Chargers, and scored 16 points and ran up an ungodly amount of yardage in the fourth quarter. But like, they had no shot to win the game. So some of these numbers are like bad, and they're quite frankly worse than they even sound. They're not good. I mean, their yards per completion, they're tied for 26 with the Raiders. Yards per attempt, they're 28th in the league. They're tied with the Giants. They're not good, man. I mean, their completion percentage, it's 24th. They don't run the ball particularly well. Again, Nix is kind of a wild card with his legs, but their running backs, nothing special. In the return game, they're average. They're okay, like nothing crazy there. Well, it's a team that, like, you've got to just be, on your P's and Q's. Like, if they do what they should do, they will win. On third down offensively, Denver's bad, man. They're 26th in the NFL.
33.6% efficiency on third down.
They're not good. And then in the red zone, they're 21st. Like, they're not a good offensive team.
Yeah, it really is. 33.6% third down percentage. The Chiefs, do you know what the Chiefs are on their third down percentages?
Yeah, 53 something.
Yeah, 53.21. Do you know what their fourth down percentage is?
I know. Aren't they like 6 of 7 or something?
Yeah, they're 6 of 7. 85.71%.
No, they're ridiculous. They just can't get them off the field.
Yeah. So the Chiefs should really lock them down on the defensive side of the ball. Now, credit to the Broncos, their defense has been good. They're hard to throw against. Teams score about 17, 18 points, just under 18 points per game against this Denver defense. Do you expect to give them they rack up? They've been very good until last week. Well, hi, Maisie. Hello. How are you?
Good.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. Are you
going to beat the Broncos this week? Hopefully, yeah.
I don't know everything.
Okay. I appreciate your honesty.
You're the one who's positive around here.
I would hope so. It's my job.
Didn't she say everybody's positive around here?
You said I'm the one who's positive around
here. I believe that 1,000%.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm known for.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sorry. What were you asking me?
The Denver defense, are they going to give the Chiefs fits? They've been good pretty much every game for the most part, except for when just everything fell apart against the Ravens. Do you think we'll see a similar situation here where the Chiefs, test them a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think Denver's defense in this game will be fine. Like, when they played Baltimore, they got smoked. When they play bad teams, they've been really good. If you look at like their yardage against, they're usually good. I mean, the Chargers at 350, Ravens at 396, Seattle at 304, the Raiders at 330. Like, I don't think it's just going to have a huge day on offense, I'm being honest. I think it's, they haven't given up 300 yards passing this year. Now, granted, they have not exactly played a who's who here at quarterback either. I mean, woof. But look, I think the big key in these games, the Broncos have been good at forcing turnovers. If the Chiefs don't turn the ball over, I think they'll get there, 24 points. Something, and that's more than if they do not turn the football over and they score 24 points, they're winning this game by multiple scores. Like, the biggest thing in this game, you cannot turn the ball over. You cannot give them short fields, easy score. And that's why they lost that Christmas Day game. They lost because they gave up 2 pick sixes or a pick six and a fumble six to the Raiders. Like, just don't beat yourselves. If you got to punt the ball in this game, that's fine. That's fine. Punt it. But don't turn it over. If they don't turn the ball over, I think they'll be fine. Even if they kind of overlook them, I think they'll be okay. But if they turn it over and they're not focused, then they got a problem. You are muted.
I'm just talking for 20 minutes over here, just wrapping up the podcast, all that stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. This is a game the Chiefs should win. If they execute, they will win. And if they don't, this is one of those games that it's division rival. They know you well. They could sneak up on you. So the Chiefs just need to get in there, hopefully take care of business early, shatter Nick's confidence. Don't let this offense get going, and then they'll be good to go. All right, let's do our final score prediction so we can get out of here. Verderame, how do you see this one playing out?
I think this game is just ugly and choppy and weird, and Denver's going to play hard. I think it's close for a lot of the game. I do think the Chiefs will win. I mean, that's what they do. Picking against them, I feel like would be kind of asinine. So I'll say they win like right around the number, just 23-16. I think it's a game that you never really feel like they're going to lose, but a game that's like kind of annoying nonetheless. So I'll go with that.
What about Maisie? Does she have a score prediction?
Score prediction for the game? What do you think the score is going to be?
What do you mean?
The Chiefs, how many points are the Chiefs going to score on Sunday?
How far can they go?
I mean, like 10 is a little for football and like 30 is a lot.
18.
18. Okay, how many the Broncos going to get?
2 or 3.
18-3 is the prediction we've got.
I like 2. She said 2.
She did say 2 or 3, yeah.
But that would, I think I'd probably rather have it 3 because then that'd mean the Chiefs would get a safety. So it's worse for the Broncos to lose, in my opinion, with only a field goal. All right. I like Maisie's. I kind of want to go with hers, but I wrote it down, so I'll just say it. I got the Chiefs. I think their offense is going to continue to take steps forward in this one. DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, it's going to be a problem. It's another whole week of practice for Hopkins. I got the Chiefs 28, Broncos 21 in this game. I think the Chiefs get out to an early lead and then just kind of maintain it and send the Broncos back to Denver, scumbags.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would be, hey, listen, I mean, no matter any of those predictions are right, 9-0 if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Shout out to all of our members. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Arrowhead Addict community, click the link in the description. Again, if you are not subscribed on YouTube, what are you doing? There's this adorable little girl who comes and blows you kisses and makes heart symbols and tells you that the Broncos are only going to score 2 points. What more can you want from a Chiefs podcast? Shout out to producer Sean for making this thing work today. Matt Verderame, who you can read all of his work over at sportsillustrated.com. Anything special coming out over there at SI, Verderame?
No, all the same stuff. Watchability index, film stuff. Next week I'll have my quarterback rankings that come out like once a month. So check all that stuff out. And I have a story in the magazine this month. So check that out on newsstands.
By the way, I had a meeting with your boss today. Not about you, but you came up. He said that he thinks you might be a little bit pissed because I got the Chiefs at number 3 in the SI power rankings. Is that the case?
Yeah, I got to give Connor good-natured guards. Who'd you talk to, John?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, John's hilarious. Yeah, I'll have to give Connor a tough time. Connor's great. He's like one of the best people you can meet, but I'll have to good-naturedly give him crap.
Yeah. Never put the Chiefs anywhere but number one. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back on Sunday with our regular slate of shows, the Chiefs pregame show, halftime show, and postgame show. But until then, keep the faith. And as always, go Chiefs.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Maisie.